So, welcome everyone to Carving a New Path. My name is Andrea Hyland. I'm the host of this show and the founder of Heal My Voice, the incubator, an online co working space for women creatives, and I am an ancestral lineage healing practitioner. And just to remind you right up front, is that the links to my website and all the other links that we mention on this show, and some we won't, they're in the show page. So look there and you can check out more after the show is over. And for anyone, if this is your first time listening to the show, I just want to say that the intention of this show, when I started it in March 2020, was in response to all the change that people were experiencing, which is still going on. At that time, it was a pandemic and social justice uprising, and there's more change that's happening for all of us. So, the guests who come onto the podcast have all listened to their inner voice and they've released things from their past. They've birthed new ways of being in the world. And we talk about a variety of topics, and it all comes down to ideas that you can use to carve a new path for yourself. So, to go into this show, this specific show, my guest today is Jeannie Dougherty, and the topic is money, ancestors, and the path forward. And before we dive into a conversation about personal and business money psychology, the healing of ancestral wounds, the vital practice of manifestation, I want to share a few words about Jeannie. Jeannie is a money expert and mental fitness guide for professionals who want a career change without going into debt. And she helps entrepreneurs that need a vital cash infusion for stable and consistent income. She's also the founder of the virtual Caregiver Conference. So, welcome back to the podcast, Jeannie.
Thank you.
I know we've had a couple of conversations over the years, and I was thinking today that we've known each other, I was thinking for at least 15 years and have been weaving.
No, it
Yeah,
has not been that long, has it?
I think it has. And that we have weaved in and out of circles and groups as clients, colleagues, and friends. Just feeling, like thinking about that, like how excited I am to have this conversation with you today.
I thought we were just at about 10.
Definitely been more than 10. It's definitely been more than 10. Yeah, how time flies. But just to give the listeners context, I want to say that there's some big topics. These are big themes that we're talking about, and so there may be more than one conversation. We've talked about having a couple of shows about this, and so some of the like root themes that we're going to be addressing, how your struggle with money making can be traced back to your roots, your hidden wealth inside your money brain, why manifestation doesn't always work, and how to turn these wounds into blessings of profit. So we're going to just kind of weave this in to different things, and we'll see how far we get today. How many maybe rabbit holes we go down, as the saying goes. Um, I mean, I have a question to get started, but I just want to throw it out there that with the introductions and everything, if there was something else you wanted to say first.
Well, my first thought was all rabbit holes go the same direction. It's just like because you end up in the same spot. You know what I mean? It's just, like it's like chutes and ladders. It just depends on how many chutes and ladders you want to just kind of cruise around on until you go, oh, I was here all along. This is where I'm supposed to be. Yep.
Yeah, we go down it and then we come up and say, oh, I can see, look around and going up and in and around and all of that. Yeah, I agree. So I was just going to start with a question in general. How do our money, ancestors, and manifestation work? How does that all work?
So, money is, if you will, how we survive and hopefully how we thrive. And we learn all money skills, just about all of them from our families. And then if we are orphans, we're going to learn it from anybody who acts like a possible parent or guardian for us. And how does that, become a manifestation issue is it depends on who you've been exposed to. So if you've been exposed to a life of, you better take care of yourself first or take care of the family first. Everyone outside, forget it. All of us matter. That's not a terrible family message, but unfortunately, I had this conversation with somebody else the other day, and I had to say, like, let's pause here for a second. Predators are in families, and family members will not out them. So if we have somebody who mismanages money in a family, we're not going to necessarily know. Or if we do know, there's not maybe a lot we could say or do about it. Because the old structures in families typically were what? The fathers or the men, the brothers, the uncles made all the financial decisions, maybe a grandfather. And they made the decision on who was going to get what money. And there was even laws put in place, about who could inherit the property for a son and all this stuff. Because if you were a second or third son, like, either you had marriage prospects yourself or you were sent to the priesthood because that was a way of securing that you were taken care of spiritually as a family, but it was also a way of securing, that you had a son taken care of, so you didn't have to worry about them. And it was usually the third son. But I'm saying birth order, but that may not be the son that actually makes it in terms of adulthood. So it's very, we're like, that doesn't seem right, that doesn't seem fair. And yeah, it doesn't. But those have been the rules, and that's how our ancestors have had to survive. Now, what is manifestation? Well, I just want to go back to, say, our ancient family members. So I'm just going to go back like 100 years. So people didn't really talk about the word manifestation. That's kind of a newer thing. But how does the money come or how does it arrive? It was usually a miracle. And it was one that you usually had to pray for. And it didn't matter what your faith was, but you had to be like in a place of like, dear God, we're desperate. We need your help. We've been faithful. We've been loyal, which is another reason why sons were sent to the priesthood and daughters were sent to the convent, because that was supposed to, hey, we gave you kids. Come on, this should work for us. That's how it was done. And it was coming from a place often of desperation. It was rarely coming from a place of we're good, we're healthy, there's no disease, all the livestock are good and healthy, the business is running. It was never like that. It was literally just like, well, if we have just enough, that's great, but we don't necessarily have more. And that's why it was such a amazing feat, I think, sometimes when people adopted, children that weren't theirs. And they might not have actually adopted them in the classic sense of giving them their last name, but they adopted them and gave them a job on the land or the farm or maybe within the business because they needed an extra set of hands themselves. So they were like sort of their adopted child, but they were literally, they fed them, they clothed them. And that's kind of how it went. And then when we go back even not that far, but go past 100 years, like, the 1860s, when in this country, the Civil War was fought. And eventually, people of color, people who were considered Black or African Americans were finally freed. Now, even that was a process that wasn't just unilaterally done. And yet we still deal with, institutional racism impacting folks. So I just want to just give a quick little historical narrative to we have not always come from a wealthy society mindset of that we are worthy of money. Our families often have tried to put what they thought was the best person forward, which many times was not. So it might have been the oldest son, might not have been a very smart son, might have not been that healthy. And so we deal with a lot of strange and unusual things. So when it comes down to, I, Jeannie, want money for whatever, or you, Andrea, want money for whatever, it's often a process of figuring out what works and what doesn't. So there are people out there, gosh, they can manifest just about 80% of what they want. Boom. And then there is 20% of stuff they just can't get. And then they usually kind of go, okay. But if you want to put that manifestation, like I need to hit my goal this month, I need to do this month, or I need to do it this year, then you are in a very separate class of people who were like, I'm committed. I'm committed to making money. I'm committed to uncovering how I'm going to do that. And that's very different than what we've been taught. Manifestors are just kind of airy fairy and they can just walk around and just, the money shows up, Andrea. They don't do much effort. And I'm like, boy, that's not certainly the story of the Industrial Revolution, nor this current, AI uh, advent of new, we now have artificial intelligence. Like that's a lot of work for the programmers who created it, and it's a lot of work for the people trying to maintain it. So it's not always like magical thin air. I mean, yes, AI can work very fast and very quickly, but AI is still learning just like we are. So it's never just a clear path.
Well, and oh, I'll tell you, there's so many things that you're opening with this conversation. I, I mean, something that I've like got these images of how, um, uh, I want to say families who move to another country for
Yes.
maybe for either an opportunity or for to get away from war or something like that, and
Famine,
how
disease. Yes.
and then there's this bond of we're all in this together. Let us work through this. And it's a common, I'll just say, storyline
Yes.
that the first generation in a new country will pool their money to support, as you said, someone, maybe the oldest son or someone who has a different talent or skill to do better. It's like there's the sacrifice that happens on the first level. And then the second level, the sacrifice is fulfilling the expectation of the family.
Right.
And that might be working in a job that you don't necessarily want, but that's what you do for the family.
Mhm.
How these patterns go back centuries, even though we're looking at the effects of right now, because uh, I don't know, I was watching something where someone was saying their family had lived in the same village for 800 years. Well,
Wow.
I,
That's stability.
right. But that is not, and even what's happening in the region is not necessarily supportive for the family. So thinking about how we move because of different things and how that I mean, how would you respond to it in terms of just I want to use the word mindset, but there may be another word that you want to use for that. Um, those beliefs or like, how does that affect us?
So
I don't
ancestral
know.
and family patterns are now being discovered in our DNA. And you better believe
Yes.
that the money making habits and patterns are in our DNA. And unless we rewire them, they will stay the same. So as much as you may choose to, I'm going to make $1 million this year, or I'm going to, open 3 businesses this year, or I'm going to blah, blah, blah this year, it may not happen, or worse, you won't be able to sustain it because we don't know in your ancestral, because really after 4 generations, we have no idea who our ancestors are. That's historically very accurate. So we don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, unless like we might know that they got married, they got divorced, there was a child, and then the next time there was a birth or death registry, the child is no longer there. And maybe we can find where they died. But that's it. Like we know nothing of their personalities. We don't know anything, and yet we are living at, we're the living, and not ancestors, but the living product of who they once were. We represent them in ways we could never imagine, and we don't do time travel, which is probably a good thing. We're not going to script the timeline, so we can't go back and meet them because we're kind of looking at the mirror. You know what I mean? Like we are meeting them, but we just don't recognize it that way. That's why it's so hidden. But if it's in our DNA, if it's in our ancestors, and there's been I'll pick one thing, a money
Sure.
mistake. Somebody
Uh-huh.
lost money, maybe in
Yeah.
a business or in a financial dealing. So it could have been horses, cows, pigs. I think you get the point. They
Mhm.
married their daughter off to the wrong person for cows, pigs. I know. But if that didn't go well, the whole family felt that. Now,
Mhm.
what they did, probably not very much. And there probably wasn't very much for that daughter to do. They had to endure. And so what we forget is that enduring and survival then becomes one part of the brain, and we often just keep repeating the same patterns. That's why we never get out of it. That's why it's really important that we move to the right side of the brain, which is where really where the rewiring is. And it's the things that our ancestors maybe dreamed of or maybe occasionally hit now and then. They got a financial miracle, the world was great. For us, here it's kind of the same thing in our modern world. Whoa, I just found $50, I just know this is here and this is there. And all of a sudden we're like elated. So I mean, I've said this more than once to more than one person, but we're not as evolved and sophisticated as we think we are. When we go back 10,000 years ago, it was the same questions we have today. Where do I get a job? Is this the right season for me to start a family? Should I get married to this person or that person? What if I don't want to get married? What if society says I have to? What if there's drought or a pandemic, in our case? What if this happens? How do I survive? It's the same human being questions, no matter what the media tries to tell us. Because what we forget is that most of the places that used to give us the information wasn't necessarily education. It was churches and temples and synagogues. And I mean, that's really where we got the information. We were given it. And then people kind of were like, I'm not really here for it, or I don't care as much, or okay, and so then you get all this fragmentation, this kind of almost opaqueness to what is truth. And that also impacts our ability to make financial decisions. Because if we are kind of like, if we came from a line of ancestors that are kind of wishy-washy, they didn't really go for things. They just kind of let things happen, which we have lines like that and did survive. Then we might inherit that and be kind of like, yeah, I know. Okay. And that may not serve us now that money moves incredibly fast, faster than I'm blinking right now across the globe. Money's moving all over the place. I'm not referring just to markets, I'm referring to humans as well in terms of all of the money transactions that we can make.
Yeah. I was thinking about how what's in the DNA can come forth in behavior and attitudes and even a reflex. And I was thinking back on when I was in my 30s and my kids were little and I was divorced and had two children who were under the age of 5. I was working full time and I was looking for ways to work fewer hours and make more money.
Yeah.
I went to my parents and told them I was going to find a job where I could work fewer hours and make more money. And their first response to me was anger.
Mm.
And it caught me so off guard that they weren't there rooting for me. But as I kind of dug into it more, not with them, because there wasn't a way to have that conversation even with them. But my father had worked a job where he had worked long hours. He was in sales and marketing. He traveled 5 days a week. He was
Wow.
very devoted to money and the family, and he provided us with a middle class, lifestyle, whatever. And saying that I was going to work fewer hours and make more money was like a betrayal of the family. It was because how dare
Interesting.
I say that? Because it was almost like I was criticizing them, where I didn't think of that at all. I thought of how one of my daughters was having some problems in school, and I wanted to be able to go into the school system 1 day a week and just be there, be like a supporting her nervous system in the school, like being there. And yet it was that. And so I think that when we talk about like there's some things that we can see the patterns. We know it. We know enough about the father, the mother, the grandfather,
Sure.
maybe the great grandfather. Maybe there's a letter they wrote about their life or something.
Hmm.
But there's another place. that things come up that are unexpected, that are hidden in the unconscious, in the subconscious.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously he's not here, so it's, I'm not trying to take apart, but what I would
Sure.
say from that type of money psychology that believes in hard work, long hours, and the moment their child says, but I think I can find a way to do it for less and get more money, it's like, did you ever learn the lesson of hard work? Because that's a heavy value that we have here in America. Other part, I'm not saying that other people don't believe in hard work and they don't believe necessarily working long hours, but a lot of places are like, no, 35 hours is max. Are you kidding me? That's called France. But
Yeah.
and that's not bad. I'm not here again to cast aspersions against the French. No, my family came from France too. So there you go, guys. But parents are often tasked with treating their children with a lesson. And they want them to know that life is hard. Like my parents used to like lecture me all the time about how hard life is. And they're not wrong. They're
Mhm.
right. Life can be very, very hard. But if you can find a way to make it easier and maybe a little lighter, who is anyone to tell you no? So,
Well,
it's
to
okay.
jump in
Yeah.
also, they did not realize at that time, or ever maybe, is that I was working a full-time job and doing the things that my mother did, who was a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
Essence, hard work. Yeah. From the minute I woke up until the minute I went to bed.
But that
But
wasn't valued work at that time.
right, exactly. It wasn't valued work because what I was trying to reclaim was some time where I could mother, and but that was not a paid job. So the complexity of what is hard work, what does hard work look like? Where is the value of money? And the thing is, this is in our brains. This is in our DNA. And part of the evolution is to actually get in touch, to me, it is the rewiring that you talk about in the way that you work with people.
Yeah, because you just brought up it so succinctly, which is, what is the value of money? What is the value of work? What is the value of our time? What is an offer? I listen to business owners and people who are passionate about work, and I sometimes sit there and I'm like, I'm not really clear on what it is that you're asking me.
Mhm.
But people don't realize that they're not clear. And that's part of the reason why manifestation is kind of all over the joint for some people. And it's also part of why people give up so easily. They get a little feedback that says, that doesn't make any sense. And that may be true. It may be true. It doesn't make any sense. So instead of taking it as feedback of like, how can I make this more clear or concrete? This may be helpful. When I choose to work with somebody, I'm always looking at it like, okay, if I'm going to hire somebody to do something either for me or with me, which are separate things in business, but if they're going to do it for me, then I'm going to have to lay out specifically what I need. And I know that. So I got to write it down, give them, actual examples and say, here's some examples. Here's where I want to go. Here's where I don't want to go. Number
Mhm.
one. Number two,
Yeah.
if I have to work with somebody, then I want to make sure that we're clear, on the goals, the duties, the responsibilities, and the communication. Because if that's not clear, doesn't matter what the work is, doesn't matter how much it is, it probably won't get done well. It's going to be kind of a pain in the butt. And that's a real thing. So I always try to make sure that whatever it is that I'm committing my time and my energy to, which is also part of my money values, and hopefully yours is not you, Andrew, the audience is as well, but that hopefully they will understand that, huh, this is a great idea. But honestly, if I break it down, it's going to take me 1,000 hours to get it done.
Mhm.
If I want to work that 1,000 hours, it's worth it.
Mhm.
If I don't, it's not. And I always think of like the Beatles, like in the very early days, they went to Germany and they played like 3 times a day in a really bad bar, I think it was, and maybe several bars. But they were so excited, and I'm sure not every set was fantastic. And then, people left, and so they said, okay. It was the same thing with the Rolling Stones. They did something kind of similar. They, worked places that they were, a band, and it wasn't always great. And then certain people left the band, and so then they decided to do this, and it just kept going. So they had commitment. which not everybody has that. This is
Yeah.
why we consider them great bands, and they are great bands. But that's where I think we get very confused, and then our money starts to shift. Anytime there's additional stress in your life, your finances can easily make a shift, usually to the negative,
Hmm.
meaning loss of clients, less money coming in, possible layoff, or you're going to be put in a job that you're not going to like, but you better suck it up.
Hmm. The other thing that's coming to me is the redefinition of what is work. And again, it goes to your brain. Like, what is work? Yes, we brought up value. What has value and everything? Because I would say that I work very long hours. And yesterday I walked at the beach for an hour and a half. I went to see the movie. I went to the movies. And because I'm a writer and a creator, I actually see that as work and like work and pleasure and like it's I need to go for long walks to just clear my mind.
Yeah.
So it's like what is work and that to me is another piece of the rewiring because I might have thought at one point like yeah I worked from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed and there was no stress involved with it because I was doing things that I enjoy and I was getting ideas. Even when you were just talking about the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, I was thinking about the film I saw yesterday, which was about Diane Warren and I think the film is called Relentless. And she is a prolific songwriter who, like
Yeah.
450 people she's worked with,
Wow.
150 films that she's written the lead song,
Score. Oh, lead song. Okay.
15 Oscar nominations and an honorary Oscar because she's never won the Oscar officially, but she was given an honorary Oscar because of all of her work. And her work day is just woven into things that she enjoys. And so, it's like there's something about that too. Like, what is hard work, or what were you told? What were you taught? What is the value that was passed down through you? And what is the manifestation? Um, okay. I want to get to because I know we could just go into, I'm like having all these ideas and thoughts that are
In real
being
time.
activated by the things that you're bringing in. Let me just ask you another question, and then we'll kind of wrap up then and see where we go for the future. But why does it matter to harness the healing power of the past to create the future we desire? Because I feel like we're talking about these old beliefs, these old expectations, the what's in our DNA, what we've been taught, but how do we harness this healing power of the past to then create the future that we desire?
So when we can heal the past, we can have a different future. So the past may be that we decide that we're no longer going to shop on Amazon. That may be like the simple thing that we're going to do. It may be that we're going to say, you know what? I'm going to tithe, not to my church, but to wherever I find the good in my life. So that could be people, it could be nonprofits, it could be so many things, right? It may be that I will not walk around in shame anymore for the amount of money I make.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that I'm going to choose a financial partnership a little bit differently. So in business, you might be like, so tell me, do you have any, money-making practices that you use? Because I've met people who are very woo, like very woo woo, and they're like witches, man, and shamans, and like they're light healers, and they speak light language, and it's wonderful. Who am I to tell them no? This is great. But when you ask them, like, well, how do you get clients, or how do you, oh, I'm working on that. Great, great. Do you have a money manifestation practice, or do you, oh, I'm manifesting all the time? Are you getting clients pretty regularly?
You are manifesting all the time. It's what are you manifesting all the time?
Exactly. Exactly. And I've just seen people who are like, but I really like your vibe. I think we should do a collaboration. And so what they're asking is really for the other person is to set up an event, have them come speak for free, and then they want to take the door. And it's like, which means like if they got any money, coming in. And I'm just like, what? But that's a money psychology that is active in somebody's DNA. You want to speak more. That's fantastic. Are you willing to create your own stages? And then they're like, what? That's how it gets done.
So what I'm hearing you say, and I know I've heard you talk about this before with clients, is that part of healing the past is identifying things that you want to do differently.
Yes. Yeah,
And
if you don't want to sit there and wait like a monk holding a bowl, hoping to God somebody actually gives you some rice,
yeah.
because that's very much done in other countries. But in the no, and I've met that people who are like, well, I mean, like I'm just asking for some bucks here because I did all this. It's not an agreement. We're like agreement people. We want things, notarized. We want lawyers to get involved. And so the best way you can do that is to be clear about what it is that you offer, clear about what you're asking, so that you don't live in the past. You don't team up with people that are not necessarily a good person for you. I mean, I just worked with a business owner that had a very messy situation with another business owner that refused to pay them. They
Mhm.
were ghosting them and they're still the same members in the group. I mean, like, how far are you going to ghost, right? But they kept ghosting and like they would not return emails, like little direct Zoom messages, none of it. And so when I was told this, I was like, you need to announce this to somebody else. You need to let the group leader, you need to make sure this is now transparent so people know what's going on, because otherwise it's opaque and nobody knows. People can suspect, but nobody knows. And as soon as it became clear, guess what? The person had to start paying them.
Mhm.
But it took a lot out of this person because they were like, I don't want to look like I'm squealing, or I don't want to look like I'm, a bad person for doing this. That's all their money psychology. That
Mhm.
is everything. I'm like, do you have everything in writing? Do you have everything in a text? Or, yeah, oh
Right.
yeah, show that. That'll help.
Well, and I'll just say I am someone who has uh, attracted money in a way that I could say is magical,
Sure.
has been unexpected, and that doesn't mean that that's all that I do. Is like wait,
Right.
like sit on my bed and wait for those magical things to come. And actually, I would say even the things that were magical, I already had some kind of structure or manifestation process that I was working on, and then things came. So I just, maybe for our final question today is a question about why isn't manifestation more effortless? And particularly regarding money making, like why isn't it that why can't we just sit on our beds and go Om Mani Padme Om and then
Just move on throughout the day with expectation.
Right.
Yeah. Well, again, we have how many thoughts in a day? Like, I think over 80,000 in a day, maybe 60,000, doesn't matter. We have a lot of thoughts. Most of them are not what? Happy or fun. That's number one. Number two, we really aren't joyful, abundant, happy people all the time. So every day you're encountering something, whether it's on social media or you're dealing with a family member or you're dealing with something else, you're just overwhelmed and you don't have the time. So I think what happens is that people lock in literally in their bodies, which also activates that DNA because it's a physical response. And they get very tight with their breath and their hands and their jaws. And then they try to go and do this thing and make money. Or they're exerting a lot of effort. Like, I mean, we all know what it's like to be, sold to. Some
Hmm.
people love it, some people hate it. It doesn't matter. In my opinion, it's all the same. It doesn't matter. You love it or hate it. It's whether you're going to buy it or not. And so when we have that, we have again an experience of, oh no, I don't like being sold to. I can't sell to other people, or we just go around and around. So What I often try to remind people is that if you want more money in your life, you need to find ways to be more grateful, more clear, and more joyful, because those are the three top emotions besides love. Love is there too, but love gets a little woo-woo, and people think what love is not always what love, and we don't want to get into power because we'll be here all day talking about that. But it's gratitude, it's clarity, and it's joy. Those are the emotions where money comes in. So if you're feeling joyful and you're sharing, to somebody like, oh yeah, this is what I do. I help women write books, and that's a very simplified way of describing what you do. Or I help people fix their money brain. Like, and if you're interested in that conversation, you'll keep it. So I share that because people sometimes just want somebody who is going to share the experience of their money journey. So whether they work for somebody else or they have a business, and that's what they want to tap into. Because if they can tap into that experience, they're more likely to buy or refer or recommend. And there you go. It's not about panic. It's not, I mean, yes, you need to do some footwork. You're going to need to probably talk to more than one person. But
Mhm.
if you've got like a wild idea, that might be your intuition kicking up, or it may not. I don't know. You'll never know until you try. But that's really what it is. It's consistency with those emotions, the clarity, the gratitude, and the joy. Then all of a sudden it's like, oh,
Mhm.
that's what I need to do.
Mhm. So, Jeannie, I know that there's a link in the show page for people to contact you. Is there anything that you'd like to say um, about your work or the way that you are currently working with people?
So what I would say is the way I'm currently working with people is really two ways. And that is I offer a money making course, and then I also offer what I call the money making boot camp. And so the course is more self-paced, and it's for the person who's like, I don't want coaching. And newsflash, not everybody needs coaching nor wants it, particularly when it comes to money. Everyone could probably use some money coaching in their lifetime, but that doesn't mean they want it. Again, you got to figure out that for yourself. They don't want that experience. But for the money making boot camp, people are like blown away. They make money in like about 30 days. They sleep better. They have better money conversations. They feel more relaxed. They have more clarity, and they have the energy to deal with, say, maybe taxes or people or businesses or whatever, because we can get once our stress levels begin to rise, it's harder. And if we don't, get stronger, then, we just kind of don't get better. And that's really a lesson from our ancestors. They didn't, were not given the opportunity to rewire anything. They had to endure. That was the message.
Yeah.
And trust that God would take them to heaven if they did everything right,
Mhm.
whatever that heaven looked like.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Well, I'd like to just say that to the listeners, if there were any questions that you had, you can post in the comments. Give us an idea of other topics you would like around this focus of what we were talking about today and going in through the ins and outs and our personal stories also. And share what's going on for you because we'd really love to know. But I invite you to check out Jeannie's website and just tune in for yourself about what is the next step that you need in support around money, ancestors, manifestation.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Jeannie, thanks for being here. That was fun.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you to the listeners. And I will see you another day. Bye bye now.